Hey everyone, Scott Cunningham, aka Scottsy Business. Today we're going to be taking a comprehensive look at the various major blockchain social platforms there are, and we're going to be looking at their token economics or their cryptocurrency economics, because we're going to be diving into how many people are holding this, how much does the platform have themselves, and we're going to just be looking at the difference of wealth and wealth inequality on these platforms, and it'll give you a much better idea as to where you'll want to be investing your time, and thus which platforms you should be focused on and using, because there are quite a few. In this, we're going to be looking at some of the top platforms, but for some people who only want to use one or two or maybe like three, you're going to have to make a decision as to where you're going to invest your time. So it's important to have a good idea of how profitable these could be in the future, how many people are actually using these, how many people are actually trading the cryptocurrency, and then again, the wealth difference, because in some platforms, the major wealth inequality does make a big impact as to how good of an experience you could have, because it can create social inequality. Like on Steam, for example, someone with a lot of Steam, even though the platform doesn't have a terrible wealth inequality, it's only about 1/3 of the majority, like 1/3 of the tokens are held by, maybe 100 accounts, but that's not terrible. It's actually one of the lower big differences of wealth inequality. When we look at a lot of other platforms, some are as bad as 98%. So, there's a huge difference there. And especially when people are getting away from fiat currency specifically because of that, and they're looking to solutions in cryptocurrency, you don't want to run into the same problems. And one of the issues on Steam is that even though it doesn't have a huge problem of wealth inequality, it does have a big issue of social inequality because of that. And it's a direct consequence of that. So the wealth inequality does actually matter, because someone brought up on my previous post, which I've also linked in the blog here for you to check out, but this is a much, much more in-depth look, and we're going to be looking at more platforms. They did point out that wealth inequality isn't so much a problem if it's not causing social inequality. On Steam, it does though. And even though it's small, the consequences of that are vast. And as you'll see later, one person from the top 10 could change the entire roster of witnesses. And what the witnesses do on Steam is they make policy changes and they can hard fork the Steam blockchain. So if one single person can control all of those, they've completely centralized the power based on who's holding enough of the currency, which creates a huge problem, especially when it's boasted as one of the best decentralized platforms. But because of this, it's extremely centralized. So, you have to consider these different things in terms of moderation and various other things. It is very decentralized. It uses the blockchain better than most platforms do for how the actual content is stored and used. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration here. I still think Steam is one of the best platforms. OX is the only platform that evades and gets around the issue of inequality for wealth, and there's no issues with social inequality as a consequence of that. And then Brave, which doesn't necessarily have a platform, but they just reward you with cryptocurrency, so that kind of gets around those issues as well. And we're going to take a deep dive into this. And again, just before we start, I do want to say that as someone also pointed out, they said, why are you pointing out wealth inequality? If you're trying to correct that, then you're looking for equality of outcome, which is basically socialism. And I fully agree. This is not to correct it, but it is to be fully aware of what that causes and the consequences of that on these various platforms, because it does make a difference, especially, for example, on Steam. Not all platforms have staking. Not all platforms have witnesses. So it's not all the same. Sometimes you're comparing apples to oranges, but it's definitely important to have all of this information in your, for you available to know, and kind of breaking it all down for you and summarizing it. I tried doing this video already. It took me 47 minutes. I'm going to try to speed it up a little bit this time, make it a little bit faster, maybe try to aim for 30 minutes. And we're just going to dive right into all this information, because there's a lot to cover. Again, this is comprehensive. This blog is 4,658 words. There's a lot that we're going to go through, but it's very important information. It's to help you make the most informed decision for where you're going to spend your time on these various platforms. And one other thing that is important to note is that when you're considering wealth inequality on these platforms and you're looking at the different token economics, it is important to consider whether or not the platform itself is holding the majority of the token or the cryptocurrency, because rarely are they actually beholden to, actually giving that out as rewards, because there's no like smart contract set in place. It's just we're trusting them that they're going to do that. So that is a very centralized component of the economy. For example, with Steam, it's as new coins are mined, they're distributed. With a platform like Tribe or Uptrend, all of the current tokens in existence, well, the majority that aren't already, used by users, is held by the platform. So 98% of Uptrend tokens and around similar percent, 98% of Tribe tokens are held by the platform themselves. So you have to kind of rely on the fact that they're not going to screw you over. However, we've seen that already happen with other platforms. So before we dive in real quick, and there's a lot of things I have to jump in through before we really dive in, just because it's important to make note of all these things. So DLive, they are the most egregious example of this. I think I'm being generous to even include them in here, but I'm going to be disparaging them the most because I highly recommend you not using DLive. They could change their price at any time. It's not on any exchanges. It's extremely centralized. They have minimum withdrawal requirements. They allow you to buy, but you can't withdraw unless you're 16 and you give your ID. They control 99% of all the tokens. They have 99% of all the tokens. And they originally incentivized users to go on and set up verified accounts by putting in 2,000. But then again, if they weren't 16 or they weren't willing to give their ID or they weren't willing to put in more money to make up 4,250 to be able to withdraw, or they didn't earn enough, then they're not going to make any money whatsoever. And again, they completely control the price. They could change it any time. I haven't seen them change it, but I do know, and I've linked in the blog here, that if you buy their token from them directly on their website, it's cheaper than if you bought it through the app. So again, you already see massive differences in what they're actually selling it for, because they're the only ones selling it. So it's not a global market value. It's whatever they're saying to you that it is at the time that you're buying it. We've also seen this happen on mines, where the token value went from 15 cents, because again, they were the ones only selling it, and then they were selling it for $1.25. It's currently being sold for about 96 cents. But again, it's unideal when it's completely controlled and centralized and held majority by the platform, and they can change the price and do different things as they please. Uptrend hasn't really had a big issue for this, but they did sell their coin at one point for 5 cents. And since it hit exchanges, it's good that it's actually on exchanges though, unlike the other two. Since it's hit exchanges, it's gone down 97%, and now they're doing buybacks and a bunch of other things. But anyone who bought in originally lost a lot of their money, and a lot of people were under the impression originally that your vote was worth 5 cents when it really wasn't. After everything came to fruition, it really wasn't. When you could actually go and sell it, it wasn't going to be worth that much. I mean, that's really unfortunate. So with all that being said, let's dive in. I'm going to share my screen here so you guys can see what I'm looking at. And if you want to go and look at this and follow along yourself, I'm also going to link in the description for the Publish OX, Steam, and Mines version of this blog, and you can go and take a look, as well as these are the links to the previous one I did. Based on the feedback, I wanted to come back, clarify some things, dive in more in depth, more comprehensive, and look at more platforms. So with all that being said, I think it's important that we understand the token economics of different platforms so we can make the most informed decisions. And though wealth inequality is more or less a natural consequence of Zipf's law, which you can go and check out, that's generally how economies work. And Steam does a good job of fixing this. Publish OX, however, completely solves this with crypto agnosticism, which is not having a token or cryptocurrency tied to the platform itself and only using sponsors. And this way, there's no issue of wealth inequality or social inequality on the platform. Everyone just earns and has a great time, and there's no problems there. And there's no staking or anything like that. So with all that being said, let's finally get in. Though I'm going to be very critical. I've already made many criticisms of these various platforms. However, I really enjoy using these platforms except for DLive, and I highly recommend checking all of these out except for DLive. But if I had to, before we jump in, if you're just here to hear what the best ones are, I'd say check out PublishOX because it avoids all these issues. Steem is the most profitable, check that out. And LBRY Library is a great platform because you can just link it to your YouTube. If you're making YouTube content, it'll automatically upload and then you can earn cryptocurrency that way. So those are definitely the ones that I would recommend checking out. I really enjoy using Mines. There's a lot of potential there. They are introducing Mines Pro where you can now earn more money. It's still very, very early stages, so I'm not going to throw too many criticisms at it because you can't really earn very much. But I'm actually going to be talking with the CEO this Friday, and we're going to dive into Mines Pro and get a better look at where it is right now and where it's going. So stay tuned for that as well. So I do recommend Mines. BitTube, Sapien, Tribe, all the other platforms I don't recommend as much. If you want to place your bets on, hopefully they might get better in the future and it's good to get started, you might as well. I do recommend taking some time to at least check them out and know what you're looking at, but I'm not a huge fan of platforms that don't have much of a community yet. It feels like you're wasting a lot of time, and they're pretty restrictive. Like Tribe has moderation approval for all your posts. Uptrend only lets you talk about cryptocurrency. There's various things that you need to consider. But let's start actually talking about the token economics because that was the whole point of this. We've already probably spent like 10 minutes here. So Steem, and I'm going to try to roll through this a little quick. So I'm not going to read everything verbatim, but first we're going to look at Steem. Again, to reiterate, it has the lowest wealth inequality. So they're doing the best job of managing this and distributing very fairly. However, as I explained before, because of the way that it's kind of based on anarchy and it's got staked value, which increases your influence and creates social inequality, even though only 1/3 of Steem is held by the top 10 accounts, any one single person on that roster is able to change all of the witnesses, which then control the blockchain and they control the inflation rate and all these other aspects that majorly impact the value. They could easily be changed by any one person on that list. Mind you, if they were differing in opinion, that would make a huge difference. But currently, none of them have made any votes. But if they did, they would be able to completely change the entire list. Say tomorrow I started a Steem node and one person from the top account voted for me, just one single person, I would be the number one witness. So I think that is very concerning because it is posed as being very decentralized. It is very decentralized, but in terms of where the blockchain is going and people thinking that their votes matter in terms of who they're voting for witnesses, it really doesn't matter because it's all based on paid influence. It's not necessarily based on a one-to-one vote, which would be a much better way of doing it. But then again, they can't track multiple accounts, so that creates issues there. So at the end of the day, it's pick one of two evils, and unfortunately, their control over the blockchain is extremely, extremely centralized in wealth. So the wealth inequality, though it's small, the social impact and the social inequality created from that is more egregious than any other platform. So do keep that in mind. So they do, like, you can look at the amount and the supply and everything here. I think it's not super important. Just the general stuff that I just said is the really important takeaway here. The top witness, for example, has 446.78 millivests in people voting for them with their staked influence. Now, the top 10 accounts combined have 195.27 gigavests, which 1 gigavest is worth 1,000 millivests. So just one of these gigavests out of the 195 is more than all of the votes for the top witness. So again, they could easily change it. I'm not going to bother going through and sharing all the numbers on the supply. You guys can check that out yourself. It's not as important as the general results and consequences of these. And that's what I'm really going to focus on for this video to make sure that it doesn't go over, like 40 minutes again. And again, their moderation is really good, but there's some centralization where there really shouldn't be, and where people have been led to believe that it is completely decentralized when it's not entirely the case. Again, I really enjoy Steem. I highly recommend it. No platform is perfect. This is what prevents them from being perfect. Again, PublishOX isn't perfect either. They don't really use a blockchain a lot. It's mainly a crypto monetized social platform, has regular centralized moderators who go around removing spam comments and all the rest. Some people prefer that. Some people prefer a more decentralized environment that Steem creates. But then again, you have these centralized aspects that have been brought in because of wealth inequality, which is hard to avoid. PublishOX solves this though by having no token or cryptocurrency of their own. And essentially, they also don't have stake, so there's no way to exponentially gain. It's just taking the sponsored crypto that is given to them and then, using that and tipping other people and getting tips yourself. So it's not donating. It's the tips are actually coming from the sponsors and then being given to you as the reader and to the person you're donating to. You could give a full 100%, but you are in complete control of the tip being given out. You can see, in the PublishOX earnings, because there's no blockchain explorer, because again, they don't have their own cryptocurrency. That's how they solve this issue. But you can go and check out the earnings and you can see how this all works out. Brave is not a social platform, but it does help people work with social platforms that are currently in existence. If you look at BAT growth, there's over 213,000 BAT addresses. And currently, there's over, I don't know if I wrote it, but on BAT growth, you can see how many people have signed up, for example, for YouTube. So their YouTube videos can get rewards. In Brave, there's over 226,000 publishers on YouTube currently signed up with the Brave Creator Program, which is an astonishingly high number. And that's really awesome to see. So again, they're doing really, really great with helping you monetize and add crypto monetization to legacy platforms, but they are not a platform themselves. The reason I wanted to include them though is because I highly, highly recommend using Brave, and it is an amazing, amazing platform because it's just a way for you to get more money with little to no effort. If you're signing up as a Brave creator, you're not really doing anything. You're just getting free cryptocurrency. And if you're just using Brave and allowing ads occasionally, you're going to make money too. So everyone wins with Brave. It's a great platform. Though, when you do consider that the top 20 accounts do hold about 16% of the total BAT, which is 249 million out of the 1.34 billion. Do consider though, there's also a UGP reserve of BAT, 141 million. So the top 25 accounts in total hold 57.6%. And, originally I need to make sure I correct this. In the top 20 accounts, these three exchanges hold 16% of the BAT, and then BAT has 141 million themselves. But in the top 25 accounts in total, there's 57% being held by those accounts as well as other private accounts. But again, this is about 27% is held by BAT for giving out rewards, and it's held in a reserve, as well as these exchanges are used for trading. So I don't think that's very concerning. And when you consider that, this is much, much lower. So it's actually probably a little bit lower than Steem, and there's no social inequality because there's no platform for this to happen on. So I think this is a very, very equal platform. There's no staking. Everyone can earn very equally. And then it's just what people want to donate to the people in the creator program. So it is a very, very fair no issues with wealth inequality on this platform. So I highly recommend this. And there's really no drawbacks to using Brave. It's just a slight addition to what you're already doing. And then you can link it with your phone and you can just make money, even if you're not even using the creator program. You're just using it to allow ads, or if you're just using it to block ads and improve your browsing experience in general. So definitely check that out. Library, or LBRY, currently the top 5 accounts hold 60% of all their coin LBC, and the top 10 hold 69%. Do consider that the first 3 accounts, as well as the 10th, 13th, 50th, and 51st, are all controlled and held by Library, the platform. I couldn't find the overall number of accounts that are actually holding like LBC, but regardless, you can see all their stats here on the Explorer that they are willing to list, and you can actually see all the transactions. I looked at the transactions for the accounts held by Library, and they weren't giving out a ton of rewards, so I don't think they're actually reward accounts. So I'm not actually sure what those are for. And whenever a platform holds the majority of the cryptocurrency, it's always a little concerning to me, because that creates wealth inequality, because they're just benefiting off of your hard work and then selling off the token. And while I still think Library is an amazing platform and it's really great to use, and in addition to yourself creating on YouTube and other platforms, definitely keep this in mind. There is a big difference in the wealth, and it's kind of unequal, right? So we're assuming, though, that they're just holding on to this massive stockpile. For all we know, it could be used for something else, but there's nothing that points to that. In total, eventually there will be over 1 billion. But again, how much of that is really going to be distributed amongst creators, and how much of that is really going to go to just the platform itself? When you consider how much is actually being traded, there's only 0.8% of the total supply being traded. So that's a very tiny amount. The rest is being rewarded, and then a massive portion is held by them. So again, it's hard to know exactly. I do really like the platform. I do recommend it, but do keep this in mind, that the wealth, there is a big difference in wealth inequality. So I'm not a huge fan of the model, but I'm not condemning it in any way, because it's still really great. It's very decentralized. They do a great job on Library, but you got to keep these things in mind. With Uptrend, currently, there's only 668 addresses holding 1UP points. They started off with 10 billion. They burned 9 billion. So it's a deflationary token, which is really good. Currently, their withdrawal account holds 98% of the tokens. And so that's the majority. There's only 19 million outside of that. And about, I think it was somewhere around 9 million have been distributed to different people. It's somewhere in here. I wrote a lot on this one, because you can see how it all works. When you consider that they sold it originally for 5 cents, they only sold 44,000, and then they stopped, and now it's just whatever it's valued on exchanges. Currently, last time I checked, it was 0.0023, but originally they sold it for 5 cents, meaning it's lost 97% of its value. So the people who bought that originally, and they originally claimed that, well, your upvote value is worth 5 cents because 1 point was allocated to 5 cents worth, but that isn't the case anymore. So they obviously don't claim that, but all the people who believe that at the beginning might feel like they've been, kind of tricked or cheated. I don't think it was necessarily on purpose, but that's still the consequence of what ended up happening. So definitely something to consider, because I don't know how that's going to keep going, or how that's going to continue, and where that's, it looks like it's doing better slowly, but again, it's also only a cryptocurrency platform. They don't allow you to really talk about anything else. So if I posted about something related to fitness, they would just not let me post it. So, do consider that. And they're trying to make it better and more decentralized as they go. Ideally, that's the case. But again, they are not beholden to actually truly giving out all of that 980 million, which is supposed to be set aside for withdrawals, because when you're using the tokens on the platform, they're just points and they're not real. They don't have real value until they've been withdrawn, because their hope is that you stake the tokens or lock them in, and then they get them back and you can never unstake them. So it's not like Steam, it's locked in forever and then they just get those tokens and then they never actually had a value at that point. It's really just to get some of it back without having to give you as many as you would otherwise just withdraw. But it allows you to earn more over time, which eventually creates some wealth inequality, because if we ignore the fact that the first account holds 98% of all the tokens, and we look at the second account and then compare down to the 50th account, the first account, or the second account, has 2,777,777 tokens. And when you go down to the 50th account, it only has 7,920 tokens, meaning that there is a huge wealth difference from the second top person to the 50th. And below that, people have a negligible amount. And considering it's only worth 0.0023, people barely have any value to their tokens whatsoever. On average, I'm probably only earning like $1 or $2 a month from posting there almost every single time that I post, which is like every 2 to 3 days. And again, while I still like Uptrend, it could be going in the right direction if once it really expands out and allows all topics to be talked about. It's not the best place to be investing all of your time thinking that it's going to explode and become super popular. Now, sorry, one moment. Now, when we're looking at Tribe, I'm not a huge fan of EOS applications, so you could say I'm a little bit biased. There's 3,379 Tribe holders and a current supply of 1 billion and a max supply of 2 billion. 6 of the top accounts are owned by Tribe, and apparently they're used for rewards and such, but they do own 489 million of the Tribe, which is just under half of the current supply. The top 10 accounts hold about 95% of the current supply. So you have to consider this, because that's the majority of the tokens held by very, very few people. And the reason that this matters is because, discounting what Tribe has, if people decided, one day that they wanted to just sell all their tokens, all of the other people on the platform, all their tokens would be worthless if they were all bought. And that's definitely concerning. But I mean, when you consider the fact that it's got a very, very low trading volume, you can make the decision yourself as to whether or not it's worth it for you to bother. You do also consider, outside of just the liquid tokens, there are a lot of staked tokens. For example, the top 10 staked accounts hold about 77 million. Accounts 11 to 25 hold 43 million. I couldn't get all the statistics, obviously, because I'm just going off of what's in the airdrops. But beyond the top 100, there's not a lot left. And it's just something to consider as part of the wealth inequality when we're not just talking about liquid tokens. If we're including stake tokens, it's still pretty similar, but it's just to account for everything, essentially. And the Tribe team issued a statement regarding this when I was asking questions, because I tried to inquire to various platforms about this. They said, we still own most of the tokens in various different accounts. These have been issued, but they haven't been distributed. We will be using them for content rewards and staking rewards over the next few years. The roadmap has changed a bit from the initial intent from having a token sale, and we're just rewarding the community members. While that's great, I'm not totally trusting to any platform that holds all of the tokens to themselves, because again, they're not beholden to this by any means. There's no smart contract. There's nothing that forces them to uphold what they've claimed. And we've seen many platforms, change their mind and change the price and do a bunch of things. So it's hard to rely on that. When we look at narrative, there's There's no way for me to know exactly how many accounts there are in terms of addresses, but there's 9,707 members. So we can assume if every member has an address, there's only a max of just under 10,000. There's 1,073 active niches, which are the topics on the platforms, which I don't recommend you getting involved with because you have to pay a lot more for the niche and then renew it every year than you would ever get in earnings from having a niche. And I've seen a lot of other people who own niches complain about this and the fact that they're actually just losing money because they'd essentially bet that the platform was going to be more popular than it actually is. If you actually look at the trade volume, it's extremely low. The day that I checked it, there was only $270 worth being traded, which is extremely, extremely low. It's not as bad as like what we're going to see with like Sapien, but it is very, very low. Given that they have distributed and given out over 11% of their total supply in rewards, I think that's pretty decent. So there's not really a wealth inequality issue there, but again, I can't look at who's holding what, so it's also hard to tell because there's no information on that. But when you look at their certification system and their reputation system, it's a bit more concerning. So with the reputation system based on your conduct and how good your posts are, 70% of your potential for earning is made up by that. The last 30% is made up by whether or not you've certified your account or verified it, which means you have to give them your government ID and you have to pay them $15 for some reason, which no other platform asks for. And you have to use PayPal. So it's very weird that, this is a blockchain cryptocurrency platform, but then they're forcing you to use a centralized payment processor, which again, is the only way that you're going to earn the full potential of what you could earn. So it's not that you can't earn, it's that they're going to in some way penalize you for not certifying and not giving them money and using PayPal. And I'm sure a lot of people who are very, intense about blockchain technology and decentralization are not going to want to use PayPal or give their government ID just to earn a little bit more on a platform, because no other platform really asks for this. So that's very concerning. But you can see here under reputation, what earns more and what's the multiplier, etc. And you can check all that out yourself. When we're looking at Sapien, there's currently 227 million out of the total supply, circulating, out of the total supply of 500 million. And there's only 11,000 current holders. The top 10 accounts have 345 million, which is almost 70%. 11 to 50 hold 51 million, meaning that accounts 1 through 50 hold nearly 80% of all the Sapien. So there is definitely some wealth inequality there. And the fact that the token is not being traded, right? It's only being traded. You can trade it on IDEX, and there's over 3 million in sell orders, but there's no trading going on. If you look at the Kyber network, they do have a tiny, tiny volume, 15.97 cents. So essentially, literally no one is buying or selling this token. There's no trade volume actually going on. So it's very unlikely that you could ever make money with this unless this drastically changes. So there is some wealth inequality, but it's not of much consequence because no one's even trading it or really using the platform. It doesn't have a big community anyways. It's probably something you should just not really bother with. When we look at BitTube, I can't see all of their information. All I can really see is how many users they have, for example, and how many videos. 21,000 users, 90,000 videos. You can see some information on their Block Explorer, but it doesn't give you enough for you to make an informed decision. I can't see, the percentage of who's holding what. It is being traded on a few exchanges, but there's not a lot of trading going on. Again, I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt because most platforms that don't have this information are more than likely have a very small amount of people with the majority of the token. Again, I don't know for sure, but it's safe to assume. When we consider mines, there's only 3,136 addresses holding mines tokens, and you have to consider that the top 2 accounts represent about 75.62% of the tokens, and the top 10 hold 90% of the token. So there's an extreme wealth inequality on mines. Mind you, mines is the one holding the majority of these tokens anyways, because the way that the system works is it's supposed to be a utility token. You buy it from them and then you use it to spend on boosting your content throughout the network. I think the boost system is actually really decent, but they've since limited you to 2 boosts a day, and they increased the price from 15 cents up to $1.25. It's now only 96 cents. But it's still extremely, extremely expensive for the value you get out of it. You can also spend Mines tokens on Mines Plus and Mines Pro. I'm going to be doing a video very soon with Bill Ottman, the CEO of Mines, on Mines Pro, diving into it and where it's going. I was a little underwhelming when I first used it for the first month. I only earned about $1. And if you were spending, $180 a month to have Mines Pro, you're losing $179 a month. So, do consider that. But, it is very centralized in terms of how they can control the price entirely, though they have stated it isn't meant to be a regular token. It's a utility token. You're not meant to profit off of it. It's meant for boosting and it's really just for boosting. When you consider DLive, which is the one I recommend the least, or rather I recommend that you just don't even bother with it. It's like Mines, except extremely worse in terms of the way that it's set up. They're supposed to be independent from Lino, and yet they rely on each other for buying, earning, and withdrawing. When you buy Lino points, you can be any age, but to withdraw it, you have to be at least 16 and provide a government ID, and you can only withdraw after you have 4,250, as I explained it originally. Very, very deceptive, and it really feels just like vulture capitalism, because originally they tricked people and said, well, you need 2,000 to become a verified streamer. I'm not sure if that's still the case, but I'm sure many people did this. And then eventually when they realized that they weren't earning anything and they wanted to get their money back, they couldn't. And if they were younger than 16, they also couldn't. And if they weren't willing to give their ID, again, they could not. They also hold 99.948% of all of the tokens. That is an insane value. It really just feels like a scam. And it's unfortunate because PewDiePie has been streaming there exclusively and promoting them. And I'm assuming he's just getting a huge chunk of money. And maybe he thinks it's part of the blockchain because he doesn't know anything about blockchain technology, but it is a sham. And I've given tons of information as to why this is the case in other reviews and kind of re-summarize that again today. You can also see that if you look at their application and their website, they charge you different values for their token, which just again goes to show that they could change the value at any time or charge differently. And it might be a better alternative than Twitch, but it's absolutely not a good blockchain platform. It hardly uses the blockchain. It doesn't reflect the values behind them. And they also aren't for free speech either. They banned Alex Jones, so extremely centralized moderation as well. I hope this comprehensive look at all the different token supply and everything that's out there gives you a really good idea, looking at the holders, the activity, the equality of wealth, how that affects the social inequality, and how that will impact your experience on the platform. Ideally, this will give you the most amount of information possible so that you can make the most informed decision when choosing a platform for crypto monetized earnings, for using the blockchain for decentralization, and you can consider and compare all this information. You can also take a look at some of my other reviews to give you a better idea of the platforms themselves rather than the token economics. I hope you enjoyed this. If you really did enjoy this, make sure to give it a like, subscribe, make sure to comment. And if you watched all the way to the end, in your comment, please include ##1ham. That way I know you watched the full video, and I extremely appreciate when you do, and it gives me more information when I'm going to comment back, knowing that you did actually watch the video. So please do that. And if you found this valuable, also share it with someone else who's interested in this kind of information and might benefit from knowing the differences and understanding the different tokens and and all the things behind that. Again, thank you so much for watching. You're amazing. Have an amazing day, and stay classy. I'm Scott Cunningham, aka Scottsy Business, signing off. Cheers.